I love you.
You don't.
I do.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't fucking believe you.
Jason is my son, and today is his
You could have dinner with us. My brother makes good head cheese. Candyman, I get cheese. Candyman. We all go a little mad sometimes.
Hello and welcome to Two Guys, One Necronomicon, a weekly horror review podcast where we talk about all things horror. We talk about your cult classics to your modern day trash, and today we're taking a very interesting route because we are reviewing Antichrist.
We are your hosts, Brian Hotboy LaGrasta and Shane Full Pen Smith.
Very accurate for this movie. So I can't even complain about that nickname.
Yeah.
I don't know where to begin.
Painfully accurate. I don't know where to begin either. And just as a precursor, we may get this one wrong. Like, really wrong.
Yeah. Alright, so there's a lot deeper in this movie than the movie itself. There's also a lot of uncomfortable things that happen in this movie that we're going to be talking about in graphic detail. So just be prepared.
I think that's a good disclaimer.
Yeah.
Highly graphic, very detailed and disturbing imagery.
Yeah.
It's a very surreal film. It got a lot of backlash and a lot of unpopular critical reception to it. I feel like you're on both fences where like one fence is like, oh, this movie is brilliant, and then the other fence is like, this movie's misogynistic. It's not art. It's just devoid of anything intelligent or artistic. It's just like a madman kind of, and his ideas.
Yeah. It's a very, bleak movie.
That's a good way to put it.
I think that's the best way to put it. It goes into basically not just like man and woman nature. It's like just human nature in general. Puts in a very bad light.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. So the crux of the movie is in the forest, right?
Yeah.
So they keep talking about like nature, but it's also even deeper than that. It's about human nature.
Exactly.
And the fallacy of human nature. And I think that it's just an interesting setting. You say the word bleak. That's a good word because a lot of this is devoid of color. This movie's divided into chapters. The first chapter and the last chapter, the prologue and the epilogue, are actually entirely in black and white.
Yeah. And even the middle of the movie, there's not like these vibrant colors. The most vibrant color is green. You see her in the grass occasionally.
And it's not an emerald green. It's
No.
like a dark green.
There's only one scene, and that's like not even when they're in the forest. It's when he's like describing the woods to her. It's not great. Depressing to watch, I guess.
It's by far the darkest movie we've reviewed. It's by far the heaviest movie we've reviewed.
Yeah, and we've reviewed Dogtooth, and
I want to just also clarify that this is not going to be for everybody.
oh no, definitely not.
People would watch this and probably call it quits after an hour. The first hour of the film is basically therapy talk.
Yeah, well, in the first 30 minutes, there's nothing. It's really the last, like, it's the back half of the movie. It's the last 40 minutes where, like, all this stuff happens.
It's a lot of culmination. It's a lot of grief, dealing with loss, and the stages of mourning a loved one that you've lost.
Yeah. If you're going through something like that, I definitely wouldn't recommend this movie.
Well, the reason why it was so dark, the director Lars von Trier, at the time of writing this, I believe he was hospitalized for depression.
Yeah.
So he was writing this as a coping mechanism and actually, I think, helped him get over whatever he was dealing with. So there's a lot of his ideas and stuff that he built into this movie.
Yeah, he was in a very, very dark place then, if that's what he was writing, like, during this time.
He must have been. And a lot of the concepts here is man versus woman, man versus nature. It's like a lot of like things that are constantly like at ends with each other. And all these concepts are just kind of thrown into this movie, and you get this landscape of the forest, and it's like supposed to be a representation of, I guess, biblical allegory of Eden.
Yeah, well, it's actually called Eden.
They call it Eden, but that's where it's supposed to be. But it's like an invert of Eden because it's like clearly a flawed area. It's clearly like a flawed landscape, a distorted world that they're living in. You don't even know who to trust in this movie. That's how I was taking it. I don't know whether I'm trusting him, if I'm trusting her. They're depicting her as the crazy one, but you know, he's not so intelligent, you think himself. He makes a lot of mistakes throughout this whole entire film.
He makes himself out to be smarter than he actually is. I think she even says it, like, early in the movie. He's like, oh, I don't like this guy. He's prescribing you too much. He's not even a medical doctor. He's just a psychiatrist, and he thinks he knows, like, more.
Exactly. So I guess this is his idea of, like, the stereotype where, like, a guy would kind of know everything.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
It's like a macho thing, because even her doctor, Dr. Wayne, he's like, nah, I know more than him. It's like a macho kind of concept.
That's what I'm saying. It shows both people in bad lights throughout this whole movie.
I know critics position this as an anti-man movie, but after like watching it a second time, I'm like, I think it's just anti-people.
Yeah.
We were talking about this yesterday. It's like an anti-people movie.
Yeah. Because there is anti-man aspects to this movie, without a doubt, but there's definitely anti-female aspects to it. At least it comes off that way, and they keep bringing up that, like, it's just human nature is evil. That's what I'm saying. It's very bleak. But talking about that, what makes this movie good is Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg as the two main characters.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's interesting because we almost didn't even get Charlotte Gainsbourg for this movie. Because apparently they were in talks with Eva Green to do this part.
Really?
And for some reason, it didn't work out. And Charlotte was basically like, I would love to do this movie. Like, she was very forward about it, so it worked out. I think she won like several like indie awards for this movie. I mean, she is such a powerful performance throughout the whole thing. And Willem Dafoe was great as well, obviously.
Yeah, they're both incredible in the movie. I think she even has gone on to work with Lars von Trier in like other movies since then. I haven't seen them, but I was looking through like IMDb, and I think she's been in other movies of his.
He's always usually has like a powerful female role in his movies. I'm thinking about it now. People are always like, yeah, but he always like, ends up causing them great violence.
I think it's the only Lars von Trier movie I've seen.
Yeah,
so.
You know what it is? I think he just has a certain vision, and he's like a dark idea, and he knows how to get people unnerved. And I think that's what's so cool about movies, is that people look into so much of like, oh, this is anti-this, anti-that, but like, if this guy's telling a story and it's pissing you off, he's doing something right. You know what I mean? Like, he's driving a narrative. I mean, sometimes it can be filth, but he's driving something that's so dark and so intense, clearly it's hitting a nerve, and it's causing a reaction.
Exactly, which is what he's going for, I would assume, in this movie. So, I guess I don't even want to say let's jump into the spooky pit, because that seems too lighthearted.
He's right.
For this movie.
He's right. So, this movie is 95% drama and 5% horror.
Yeah.
Because the horror is like the setting. I mean, you're dealing with a lot of deep, dark emotions.
Yeah.
And kind of consoling someone during grief, and how you make amends with that, and how you get someone over depression, how you fight fear, putting yourself into the experience and reliving things to encounter that fear.
Which in itself is horror, but there are horrifying things on screen.
Exactly. So
later on.
There's the David Lynchian imagery you can see kind of filtered throughout this film. So I would say that, the landscape, are the horror elements. Most of it is, like I mentioned, therapist-patient dialogue. And I would say right now, horrible idea for a husband to be therapist for a wife.
Yeah, which I think she even says to him early on.
And she's on the money. On the money 100%.
It's never gonna work.
Never.
Let's get into this.
Okay. Mourning the loss of their son, a grieving couple arrive at their cabin in the woods to mend while nature assumes its role.
And we kick right off with Antichrist, like, written in crayon. Written in, like, pink crayon with, like, reddish, and then it's a green background.
Are you saying crayon or crayon?
Crayon.
I'm sorry. I get so confused what you're saying.
It's the way I've always said it.
I'm so sorry. Slipped it past me the first time. The second time I needed a refresher.
All good. All good. Then it cuts right to the prologue, which it just says prologue. There's no title, right, for the prologue yet?
No, it's just... This movie is done in, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 chapters? Because there's chapter 1. Sorry, there's a prologue.
4 chapters, and then an epilogue, yeah.
So technically, I guess 4 chapters and a prologue and an epilogue.
Yeah.
It would be 6, but yeah, it is written in like this pinkish reddish hue.
Yeah.
And it's very creepy.
And then the prologue is just in black and white.
And I'll be honest with you, I was first attuned to this movie, knowing nothing about it. Obviously with a name like Antichrist, you're thinking this is an evil movie. Like, this is an evil concept. I mean, I don't like evil, Shane.
No.
But the thing about evil is, it's interesting.
It is. It makes for a good movie.
And the poster is like, you see Willem Dafoe and Charlotte, like, at the base of a tree, and, like, all these white hands, like, on the tree. I'm like, this is sick. Like, I need to see this. So, just looking at the initial like poster work of this movie definitely drew me in.
And the opening definitely will draw you in because it's Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg. By the way, we're going to call them by their actual names because they don't have names in the movie.
Yeah.
They're actually just he and she.
I think obviously intentional purpose. Man and woman, he and she.
Exactly. So they're in the shower and right away, you know what kind of movie you're getting because you get full penetration.
Passion bump! Passion bump! Passion bump! My G. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. First, probably 45 seconds of the movie, it's black and white. There's like this, I don't know what kind of a song. It's like this classical song that's playing in the background.
Relaxing opera music?
We'll call it like a relaxing opera tune. They're having sex in the shower. Full penetration.
Yeah, right there.
You get the shot of it, and I'm like, wow.
And it actually is full penetration. I believe we read that they just got 2 porn stars, right, to perform that.
The old Orgasmo stunt cock?
Yes, exactly. It's not actually the 2 actors, it's 2 other people, but it's there, and it's real. They kind of like move from place to place while this is going on, because then they're in front of like a washing machine.
They bang on a washing machine.
Yeah. Eventually they get to the bed. But while this is going on, you pan to like their child in a crib. You pan to other things. It's 3 statues, and on the 3 statues it says pain, despair, and grief, which is very important to this movie.
Yeah, I guess it's Lars von Trier's way to tell a story of getting over your mourning, your loss.
Exactly.
Those are the 3 stages that are tenant concepts throughout this entire film. And as they're having sexual intercourse, which, just another fair warning, they're going to have sex a lot in this movie. And it's very graphic, and there's a lot of nudity. And you definitely see a lot of Willem Dafoe ass. You see like a baby monitor. There's noise, like you see the noise meter going up and down.
But it's muted.
But it's muted because obviously they're having sex.
Yes. Which I don't think is a good reason to mute it. I mean, you should still probably, like, want to know, just in case something's going on.
Well, I mean, it's muted on their end.
Yeah.
You want the baby knowing they're having sex. But I know what you're saying.
No, I'm saying, I don't know how baby monitors work. Wouldn't they want to hear, though, what's going on? Or do they just not hear what's going on?
I think they don't hear it. Because I think the noise meter would indicate that it's on. They're just not.
That's what I was curious about, like, the mute. It shows that, but is it muted on their end? I wasn't sure.
No, that's a good call out. I guess my interpretation was they muted it. I mean, I don't know how you cannot hear your baby in the other room. I mean, he wasn't crying, but he was getting out of his crib.
Yeah, you would hear, like, the noise and, like, him ruffling around. So, the baby slowly, like, he gets out of the crib. He starts to climb up on the table. He knocks over the 3 statues of pain, despair, and grief. And they've left the window wide open.
Yeah, the wind kind of blows the window open, right?
Yeah.
And please explain to me how the family does not leave the windows closed.
Don't know. I guess just an accident.
It's crazy. But the boy starts crawling up, and he pushes a chair to get on top of the chair near the windowsill.
Yeah. He's, like, looking out at this, like, snowy scenery. They're probably, like, 3 stories high, it looks like. 4 stories high. He has his little doll. We keep cutting back to the sex scene. Willem Dafoe's foot knocks over a water bottle. And then you see the kid fall out of the window. The way he films it is you see the impact.
It's a tough scene to watch because you see the baby falling in slow-mo. The whole thing is done in slow-mo. This whole entire sequence in the prologue. And the baby's just falling in the air, and then you get the overview shot of him just hitting the ground and the snow kind of pluming in the air. It's insane. And then they appear to be, finished with their sex, like, at the end of it, but...
Yeah, it's like simultaneously as both are happening. And right from there, we cut to Chapter 1, Grief.
And you immediately see we're calling him Willem Dafoe and Charlotte. He and she, they're following their son. He's in a coffin, and it's kind of like, I guess, post-funeral. And obviously, he's crying. You see a shot of her. She's, like, dead inside.
Yeah, because she eventually does just collapse while walking. And then we cut to her, like, waking up in the hospital. You find out because Willem Dafoe asks if she's alright, and she's like, didn't you just ask me this? And he's like, I asked you yesterday. She's like, how long have I been here? And he's like, a month?
A month.
It's a month.
Yeah, and she's like, Dr. Wayne's telling me that my grief pattern is atypical. To which he disagrees with, because he thinks it's completely normal.
He disagrees with pretty much everything Dr. Wayne is saying in this scene. Dr. Wayne's not in the scene, but what Charlotte is telling him Dr. Wayne is saying.
Willem Dafoe's character, therapist, but he's not a doctor. But he thinks he knows more than everybody else. So he's like, I don't like the fact that Dr. Wayne's having you taking too many pills. He's like, I've treated 10 times as many patients as Dr. Wayne.
Yeah, like it's a competition.
Yeah. But clearly she is blaming herself for her son's death. So there's a lot of guilt there.
Yeah, she even says, she's like, it's my fault. She could have stopped him. She's like, she knew that he had been getting up early and that he knew how to, like, get out of the crib. Like, she should have known this could have happened.
Yeah, apparently he didn't know that, but
Yeah.
she was knowing that he was waking up in the middle of the night.
Because he even tries to tell her, it's not your fault. It's like, I could have stopped it too. Like,
Of course.
it's not either of their fault in a way, but it is in a...
They both share a burden here.
Exactly, because, like, whoever left the window open, like, that should have been closed.
It's neglect. There's no excuses. Like, when you have a kid, it's like that's your number one priority. Everything else falls aside, no matter what. So, you gotta make sure that the kid is, safe at all times, no matter what. Like, people may have different views of this, but at least how I understand it growing up is, like, once you have a baby, your life is changed here and moving forward. Like, this is your primary focus. Not to be having sex in the other room. Well, I guess they wouldn't know their kid is up, so I get it.
Yeah, which is why she blames herself, is because she knew he was getting up earlier. What I'm
trying to say is they have to plan for everything.
Yeah.
So if she knows that her son's waking up in the middle of the night, she has to tell the husband. And also, on the other end, I like to say, like, I don't know the distance between their rooms, but if that's even an issue, well, just have the kid sleep closer to you.
Yeah, it's...
But in any case...
I believe it's Willem Dafoe tells her, like, grief is not a disease. It's like a natural, healthy reaction to what you're going through. So you're supposed to go through this. And that's when you learn, like, how he's a therapist. This is also the scene where his wife is like, you shouldn't treat your own family. Yeah. Which she is completely correct about.
And then he says, in principle, I agree, but no therapist knows you like I do. And that's just a mistake for two reasons. One, there's a conflict of interest. And two, he's the coach. He's telling her everything that she's feeling, coaching her through all these emotions and grief. Eventually, she's going to start resenting him for that. She's going to be like, stop preaching to me. Stop doing this to me. Like, you're annoying. Like, it's going to have, like, the exact opposite effect that he's trying to get across. It's going to cause resentment. That's how I would envision it.
No, I agree. That's why you need a third outside party. So even if she, like, hates him, it doesn't affect anything else other than...
100%.
Whereas this, like you said, he's the husband. Like, you're just going to grow resentment towards him, and it's just not going to end well. It's either going to end in a divorce or how this movie ends.
Fair enough.
We get back to their home. Defoe finds a letter. It's in a...
manila envelope.
Exactly. Yeah. And we also see Charlotte Gainsbourg dumping all of her pills into the toilet.
Yeah. This manila envelope is from the medical examiner office.
Yes.
He puts it in his coat pocket. He doesn't look at it. But she's dumping her pills, and she's still grieving. She's sobbing. She says, it hurts. It hurts. He's like, listen to me. There's no other way around it. And she just wants to die. He's like, I'm not going to let you do that. And then she kind of asks him, and this is a good question. She's like, is this going to keep going on and on? And he's like, no, it'll change, but it's also going to get worse for you.
Yeah, I mean... He's very honest with her. It's gonna keep getting worse for a while, but eventually it will get better. So I guess he's like putting like that little light at the end of this like very, very dark tunnel.
And then they're in bed together, and she tells him, you've always been distant from me and Nick. And he's like, okay, well, throw some examples at me, hit me with something. And she's like, well, last summer you were distant with me as a husband, and you were distant to him as a father. She's like, I never interested you until now that I'm your patient.
Yes, and he tries to, like, tell her, you wanted last summer to be on your own. You wanted to go to the cabin with just him. You didn't want me there. You said you wanted to do your thesis. You wanted, like, your piece, essentially. But you find out she didn't even finish her thesis when she was up there.
No, she didn't. She was distracted.
And like you said, she said, like, you weren't interested in me until I was your patient. And she's like, you're indifferent to whether or not your child is even alive. Which is very cold to say.
It's very cold. This is the therapist, right? He, like, looks at her intently without, like, almost like looking through her, just trying to, like, get into her brain. Like, really analyze her. And he's taking the emotion out of it. So he's just trying to actually help understand what she's actually, I guess, experiencing and feeling. So he doesn't really react in, like, a totally negative way. And the way this movie works is they'll have, like, these tough interactions, and then they'll just have sex out of nowhere.
Yeah, because, like, she starts to kiss him.
Yeah, like, it gets very sexual. They don't have sex here, but she starts kissing him.
He doesn't want to do this. Like, yeah, he realizes this is, like, a bad thing to do right now. This is, like, one of her ways of, like, I guess, like, trying to push aside her grief for, like, just a brief moment and do something else.
Yeah, and he thinks, obviously, that it's a harmful thing to do, so he doesn't want anything to do with getting sexual. In the middle of the night, she starts having, like, these breathing episodes, so he's teaching her how to breathe effectively.
Yeah, are they basically, like, panic attacks, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
And he tells her to picture herself blowing thistle blooms, so it's something that she did back in Eden in the cabin. And then obviously she's envisioning herself doing this. She sees her son next to her.
Mm-hmm. Basically, he says, you're still in mourning, but now you're in a new phase of your mourning. You're in anxiety. She says, like, it feels physical. It's like, it feels dangerous, this new phase.
Because anxiety can lead to physiological reactions, for sure.
Well, yeah, he even describes it. He's like, you have dizzy spells, dry mouth, like a fast pulse. I think he lists off a couple other things that come with it. As he's, like, describing this, she jumps on top of him to have sex with him.
Yeah, decides to just take off her clothes and tries to have sex with him. And he's like, you never screw your therapist. It's not good for you.
I like how he puts it, though, because he says, no matter how much he may like it.
Yeah, exactly.
You never do it.
Do your breathing.
And this is where she's like, do you love me? And he says, yes. Which is a very, like, reoccurring thing that happens throughout this movie. Like, this question of, do you love me?
To reinforce the love?
Yeah.
The sex is so, like, powerful and, like, raw and primal.
Yeah.
I think that the love is very absent.
Because they always say, like, I love you, but she never believes him.
I do not think it exists. And that's something that we can debate as we keep going throughout this movie.
She has points where it does seem like he's so interested because of, like, the patient aspect.
I think because that mindset is I need to understand you fully, and this becomes, like, my life's work now.
It's a puzzle he wants to solve.
Exactly. So there's that dynamic of, like, patient versus wife.
And then I believe this is where they have, like, a conversation about fears. And he's like, stay where the fear is and realize that fear isn't, like, inherent danger. It's just fear.
One piece of this puzzle that he's trying to figure out is greatly helped by the fear pyramid he's going to create.
Yes.
He creates this pyramid, and he wants to find out what she fears the most. That would be technically at the top of the pyramid. So he asks her, what does she fear the most? And this is, like, something he tries to figure out throughout the whole movie. And she's like, I do not know. Can't I be afraid without being there a definitive object?
Which is true. You can just be afraid. It's just like an anxiety thing. Like, you're just afraid, but you don't necessarily know what it is you're afraid of. It's not a specific object. It's more of I guess, like an idea or...
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, too, because wouldn't you think the thing that she fears the most has already happened? Like, her son dying?
Yeah. So it's almost like the fear of always thinking about that. Like, having that always a part of you now.
And there's also the fear that she'll never be able to get over her grief. Like,
Yeah.
I just know for me, struggling with anxiety, one of the biggest things that I deal with is worrying about worrying, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, and that's something I can kind of understand what she's going through here is, like, the fear of fear, and you're always thinking it's going to be there. Like I said, the anxiety of there being worry. It may sound ridiculous, but it's something that does happen.
It's a real thing. It happens to people, and it's tough. I mean, it's not something I go through, so I can't really speak on it like that, but I understand, like, it's real. Like, it's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, you gotta, like, really, really just grasp at ideas and wrap your head around everything. I mean, I do understand this whole idea that he has of, like, wanting to put her into the position of what she fears the most. I also would think baby steps is a good idea.
Yeah, they're trying to go to sleep, but she gets up in the middle of the night and she just starts, like, banging her head into the sink. Pretty hard.
Yeah.
And, like, he goes to stop her.
Pulls her away, yeah.
And, of course, like, her instinct is anytime, like, he tries to stop her from doing something or, like, be a therapist, she tries to have sex with him again. But this time, she does it.
It's like she almost is, like, trying to sabotage what he's doing to her. Like,
sex becomes her, like, coping mechanism.
Yes.
It's her way of, like, not having to talk to him to deal with her problems.
I'm going to throw a lot of curveball theories that I have for this movie.
That is fine, because I don't know.
They can be way off the mark, but, like, to some degree, I actually think she's trying to fight back him trying to help her.
Yeah, no, it's very possible. Like I said, I have no idea.
Or it's a way of making him stay to continue to help her without actually
helping her
and, like, actually internalizing anything he says.
Yeah. He instantly regrets having sex with her, though. Like, he even says it, like, I regret this.
And I will be frank with you, I do not think he's a good doctor. And this is the first incident where he actually has sex with her. I just think, why? Number one, why are you her therapist? Number two, you're going to have sex with your wife that's grieving.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. If he was a good doctor, he would realize he shouldn't be her doctor.
Yeah, exactly.
His arrogance gets in his way. They do talk again, and he says, if you can't tell me what you're afraid of, tell me where you're afraid of. And that gets her to say, the woods.
What about the woods scares her? And she says, everything. But Eden scares her.
Yes, it's specifically the woods at Eden are what scare her. And so he writes Eden in the pyramid, but not at the top.
He thinks there's like another route, I guess, to the fear.
Yes, because now a lot of the movie for Defoe's character is figuring out what the fear above Eden is.
Mm-hmm. Like, what about Eden? She makes the general concept everything about Eden, but he's got to think, like, there's going to be something that's triggering it.
Yeah.
And that would be at the top of the pyramid.
So then, of course, they have a little play fight, but she takes it a little too far and bites his nipple a little too hard.
You know, sometimes things can get dangerous when you're having sex with your patient and you're just going to bite off your nipple.
Oh my god. Now they're like out of the mood, which they should have been out of the mood. He should not be doing this to begin with. And we cut to them on a train.
They're not driving into Eden. They're taking a train. And for setting-wise, I know the film is supposed to be in Washington State, where it's set, but I know they filmed the entire movie, like, or majority of it in Germany.
Really?
Yeah.
And same things I didn't know. So he starts therapying her on the train.
I like that.
Therapying.
That verb.
Yeah. I'm using it as a verb now.
I'm going to call it hypnosis.
Yeah, we could, either one works. Yours is probably more accurate. So he's basically like, feel the seat underneath you. Like, become one with the seat. Now, imagine you're in Eden. What do you see? She says, I see a bridge. I hear no birds. I see running water, but it has no sound. I think she sees a darkness going towards the cabin.
She says darkness comes early down here. The little deers are hiding among the ferns as usual. It's not difficult to walk here, and that, you know, she's actually like, it's okay.
Yes, but then she gets to the foxhole, where it does get difficult to walk.
It's like muddy, right?
Yes. Past the foxhole, there's an old, rotting tree that's been rotting very slowly for years. And now she starts walking towards the cabin. Defoe tells her, don't go into the cabin. Lie in the grass. And this is the scene I was saying is the most colorful. It's not even vibrant green, but it's the closest to a vibrant green you're going to get is when she lays in the grass here.
Yeah, and he's like, when you're lying down in the grass, describe it. She's like, green. All very green. She's like, okay. He says, melt into the green. And she does. And she becomes one with the grass.
Yeah.
And then a lawnmower comes and just mows her down. Never happens.
But what does happen is she wakes up on the train, obviously. No matter what happens, you were there, you did it. Like, you did this now.
Exactly. You walked in Eden. That's the initial start. You've already tried to attempt conquering your fear. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve, Shane.
Exactly. So now they are walking in the woods. We cut to them actually walking in the woods.
They're heading on up to Eden, the cabin.
I might be out of order, but I think she starts to say the ground is burning.
Yeah, feels her feet burning from the ground. So she kind of takes a seat and takes off her shoes and socks, and they reveal her feet. And they're hideously burned.
No, I think she just has a blister.
Yeah.
You know, a hiking blister like one would get.
It's on fire.
But, I mean, to her right now, it just feels like it's not the blister. The ground is actually just melting her feet.
Yeah, lava floor.
And then we start to get to some of the more disturbing imagery. The wife lies down on a blanket, and Defoe then walks deeper into the woods. And Defoe sees a deer in the distance. And you think it's just a regular deer.
I don't think it's a deer, Shane. I think it's dinner.
But it's not. It's got like a... What would you call this? Like a...
I thought it was a fetus.
Yeah, but it's also like a formed deer. Like, because it actually has like a head and stuff that looks like a deer.
Yeah.
So, but it's like a fetus hanging out of the back.
It is. It's hanging out, and the deer kind of like runs away.
And it sways.
And the embryonic sac sways. I don't even know how you would describe it.
That's what I'm saying. It is like that and a fetus, but then it's like the top half is kind of like a formed baby deer.
It is. You can see like the head of the deer.
Exactly. So it's almost like the birth hasn't been finished. Now, does this mean anything? Probably.
Nope, it means nothing. The world is in a state of stillbirth. You know, we live in an imperfect world, and we just kind of make it worse. I mean, from what we know, deer is generally associated with fertility, a representation of like new beginnings, new results, transformations. I always think of a deer, I always think of something generally peaceful. They don't attack you. They definitely are dumb as shit.
They just like jumping in front of cars. It's like their favorite pastime.
One of the greatest animals, and they're just so darn dumb.
Yeah, no, because they look majestic as hell.
Yeah, they're really nice, and I hate that like sight of a deer on the side of the road with its tongue out.
Yeah, it's very sad.
It's so hard to watch, because, you know, they're so peaceful. Especially when they're on my dinner plate.
So, yeah. After this, we cut to Chapter 2, Pain, parentheses, Chaos Reigns. What
the hell does that mean, dude?
I don't know, but a fox is going to tell us.
That's actually true. So expect that. So when I hear like a chaos reigns and when I'm getting it, my just initial, this place is effed up. This is like the inverse of the Eden that you get in Genesis. You know?
Essentially, the name of Eden is supposed to be, I guess, ironic? Or
It's like, this is like an ironic universe where creation is not perfect. It's flawed.
Yeah.
The nature is flawed.
Everything is backwards. The wife says, should we get going? And he agrees. And this is when they get to the bridge. And she is very nervous when they get to this bridge.
She kind of takes like a couple of steps, very hesitant to cross the bridge. It's like overlooking water. And I think it's like a creaky wooden bridge. Which, I guess everybody would be scared, but she's like literally petrified. He's like, stay in it, stay calm, because he's trying to make her like one with this place.
Yeah. He wants her to just take her time and get across the bridge.
But she darts.
No, yeah. She sprints past the bridge. So then Defoe, he just starts walking, and then he sees the foxhole, and then he also sees the dying tree. He starts to see all the things she described.
As he kind of continues walking up the cabin. And then you will see this tree throughout the film.
Well, yeah, the foxhole too. They all come back. Before he goes into the cabin, though, he touches something. Now, this is important what he touches, and we're not exactly sure what it is. I called it a mason wheel. It is a stone wheel. But it looks like it's on one of those, things where you, pedal it and it spins to, sharpen a tool.
Yeah, that's what I think it is. Is that what a mason wheel is?
I think that's what a mason wheel
we're gonna
is.
go mason wheel.
If it isn't, I'm sorry. It's not important, the exact name.
Exactly. Just know that it exists.
Exactly. And after he touches that, he finally goes into the cabin.
And while in the cabin, he puts a blanket over his wife who's sleeping. At night, he starts looking at some pictures of his wife and his kid. Because, this is all about her grief, but, he's grieving as well, too.
Yeah.
It is his son.
Well, that's the thing. And each person does grieve differently. It's just how life is. He grieves in his own way. Since he's not grieving like her, that's why she thinks he doesn't care.
Well, that's the thing. When you're a psychologist, you see every side of the human brain.
Exactly.
So you know where the emotions come from, where behaviors come from. So your reactions are going to be 100% different from everybody else.
Which is why it make him off like he doesn't care, but he's kind of just doing it in his own way internally, I would assume.
Yeah.
Unless he actually doesn't care, and
well,
I mean...
I could be wrong in saying this, but even if a guy like him doesn't cry, it doesn't mean he feels any less bad.
No, because he does cry at the funeral.
Yes. Like you said, he's reacting differently. He's managing it differently. Maybe it's a better way of managing it. Who knows?
Each person's going to handle it differently. So then he tries to sleep that night, but acorns just keep pelting the roof.
Yeah, and she's like, just acorns. She kind of wakes up and she's like, it's just the acorns, babe. Just the acorns.
And it's a lot of acorns.
Yeah.
And now this is another thing I don't know, because I don't know, all these symbolism things, but, do the acorns represent anything? I feel like everything in this movie represents something.
Yeah.
So it's just, something to think about.
It's littered with symbolism. I think it's just, extension of nature.
Yeah.
I don't know if it specifically means anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. But he wakes up with his hand outside of a window, and there's, things growing on his hand.
They're bugs,
Yeah.
but I just want to say I don't know what bugs they are. I don't know what a tick looks like. Are they ticks?
I think ticks are brown. It almost looks like...
They're big, too.
That's what it almost looks like plants, were growing, because they're, greenish, right?
It looks like he's growing barnacles in all honesty.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of putting it.
But he starts plucking them out.
Yeah,
There's
it's actually disgusting.
There's 10 of them on his hand. He plucks them out and goes back to bed. But next morning, he's outside setting up stones.
He sets up a fun little game for his wife.
She's like, what are you doing out here? Why are you setting up stones? He's like, listen, I cheated. He says, you cheated me yesterday. And now he needs her to do a little exercise. You're going to walk from stone A to stone B.
Yes. He picks her up and carries her to the first stone. This way she doesn't have to walk on the grass, because she's absolutely terrified of it.
Yeah.
So he puts her on one stone, and he, holds her hand and helps her walk to the next stone. And, this is, a really big struggle for her.
Yeah, it is. And she, again, you do your breathing. She's doing the breathing that he taught her. She does get to the second stone, and he's extremely proud of her progress.
But this is all erased, because then a baby bird falls out of a tree, it gets covered in ants, then a hawk picks it up and eats it.
Yep.
And I'm just like, ew?
What kind of a bird was that? You think a hawk?
It was either a hawk or a falcon. I'm not Charlie Day, I'm not versed in bird law. But it had to be a hawk, an eagle, or a falcon.
Yeah.
It's one of those three. It didn't look big enough to be an eagle. That's why I was saying hawk.
He found his prey. He fed on this baby bird.
Yes, that was covered in ants.
It's the food chain.
Yeah. It's just gross to see up close in film.
Yeah, so the imagery is very difficult. From, I guess, what I can interpret from that, another example of nature kind of taking its course.
Yeah. We cut to her crying in bed again, just like shouting how much she misses him.
And this is an interesting scene as well, because she's never acted this way before. This is something like, he's kind of like shocked to hear.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't expect this to happen so quick.
During all this, she like admits she became afraid while she was here, and she stopped writing while she was here. Does she tell a story of how she heard her son crying and then went through the woods?
Yeah.
But she
does.
couldn't find him at first.
Correct.
But then when she does find him in the story, he's just playing with lumber in the shed.
Not crying.
But there's still the crying noise.
She still hears it. She still hears it.
So was she starting to go mad before all this happened? Or is this like a poor recollection on her part of what happened?
That's the interpretation. You want is it like rhetorical or you?
No, I'm actually asking like what you're like.
I think that she's replaying guilt.
Right.
And we'll go into that. What I also will say is we never got into what she was studying when she got to Eden last summer. Like what she went there for with her thesis.
Have they mentioned it yet at this point in the movie?
There's like a flashback that ensues.
That's right.
She's cutting out an image of 3 witches hanging.
Mm-hmm.
Her thesis is about mistreatment of women.
Yes. Her thesis was the mistreatment of women throughout history.
Gotcha. And I think the biggest pinnacle example...
The witch trials.
...was the 19 or so women that were hanged during the 1600s for witch trials.
Yes. But we will learn something changes with her thesis throughout this. It doesn't go from the mistreatment of women.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to say that you see the book. I guess this is the stack of her thesis. Everything's in this book. The book is titled Gynocide. Did I pronounce that right?
Gynocide. It's probably gynocide.
And on the cover of this book, this is one of the creepy scenes for me because there's these creepy looking people in robes and one's holding a bin of babies. And I'm like, whoa, this is creepy. Because it's like kind of distorted. You can't really see it well, but it's very creepy looking book.
Her whole mindset changed while she was at this cabin. You'll even see some of the things she's studying here when she was there. She carried over to when she went back home. The 3 statues, the pain, grief, and despair. You'll eventually learn they are the 3 beggars. We won't go into that yet, but start thinking about that. Because that plays a pretty big role into what this movie is.
Exactly. And so he tells her that she didn't hear her son Nick crying. And because she encountered something that she could not explain rationally, she placed Eden high on her fear pyramid.
Yeah.
He tells her that she tied the emotional event with the place of Eden. She felt threatened, and if the danger were real, the fear would have saved her life because, when you run on adrenaline, you're using that for your fight or flight. So technically he's saying the fear actually would save her in this regard.
Defoe then is still trying to figure out what the top fear is. I think he's crossed off nature at this point.
Yeah, he's crossing shit off. He's gonna be doing it the whole movie.
Yeah, trying to figure out what's going on.
And just as he's thinking, he's literally attacked by her. And he kind of stops her, brings her to the floor, and she's like, you never should have came here. She also tells him that he's arrogant, which we already know, but now she explains it. And she says she doesn't think this will last. And I didn't really know what that meant. I don't know if she means their time together, or there's time at Eden, or what she's referring to when she says this may not last.
I think thinking of the end of this movie, I think she means their time together. Because I think she has an idea of what's going to happen by the time they leave Eden.
I'm sure, because I have some certain theories about her.
So I think then we cut to the next day, where they're sitting on the porch together. He realizes his wife seems unusually happy, and he's kind of confused about that. When he asks her, you can't just be happy for me, just once.
And then he tells her about some of the dreams that he's been having lately. She then makes a psychology joke a little bit. Mm-hmm. And she's like, something about Freud being dead or something. Just dreams are not a part of modern psychology.
Yeah.
Freud's dead, isn't he?
Yeah, because the dream he was having was him standing in the raining acorn field. He was standing outside and he was just getting pelted by the acorns.
Yeah, a still shot of the acorns falling down on him.
And that's why she says, you're a therapist. Dreams don't matter. Freud's not around. No one cares about that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
After, they have this conversation, Defoe starts to walk away, and he starts walking through, these tall plants by himself. That's when he goes, and he finds a fox.
And the fox is kind of it's a jump scare, actually, a little bit.
Yeah.
Because he kind of pops out. And then you just see a deeply wounded fox on the ground.
Exactly, yeah. Because the fox is eating itself.
It eats its own stomach? Is that a stomach?
It's either its stomach, intestines, one.
Yeah.
It's eating itself, and then This is what we were saying. It then, like, looks at Defoe, and then just demonic voice, the fox says, chaos reigns.
And that's the end of chapter 2 of this movie. But I'm like, whoa, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
And, okay, so this is my theory.
Please, let me hear it.
Ring my bell.
Ding ding.
So the fox is eating itself. I'm gonna relate this to... This movie tries to, like, make a correlation between humans and nature. But humans kind of, through the way we live, nature is either positively or negatively affected by humans. Mostly negatively affected.
Yeah.
So it's like the fox eating itself is like men and women destroying nature.
Yeah, so essentially they're destroying themselves.
They're sowing themselves. That's exactly what I was getting at. Also, the fox is a spirit animal in times of great change. And I guess her reactions are probably what sparked the idea of
because she's
this
like
animal.
changing. The fox is kind of like also symbolizing, I guess, the like mind and the change of their mind. In a way?
I think so.
Okay, interesting.
Because as much as she's changing,
He's also changing.
he's definitely changing. He's seeing some shit. I also want to point out some more things that I noticed.
Because she hasn't seen any of these things. He's the only one who saw the deer fetus. He's the only one who saw Chaos Reigns Fox.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because she does mention to him earlier on, she says that she came to realize all the things she found beautiful about Eden were actually hideous. And she's able to hear things now that she couldn't hear before. The cry of all things that are to die. He tells you, that's what fear is going to do. It distorts reality. And she's like, nature is Satan's church. As the wind howls through the cabin window, that is Satan's breath. So I think that was an interesting concept. And then he puts Satan at the top of the pyramid and then just quickly crosses it out.
Yeah, we're in chapter 3, which is despair, parentheses, that word that we haven't decided how to say it yet.
Gynocide?
Gynocide, something like
There's
that.
really not a better way to enter a new chapter right after an animal speaking.
Exactly. Chaos reigns.
So now you see, it's like pelting rain. He takes a ladder from outside and he goes into the attic, climbs up the ladder, and he sees all of her research from the last time she was up here. You see writings, you see clippings, you see images, and it's really primarily related to witches being hung. There's also, I think, a bunch of women being bound, too, like in various positions.
Yeah, it's all torture to women, which makes sense with her thesis of, like, bad things happening to women throughout history.
I might be a bad guy, but I didn't actually know what gynocide meant. I know side means eradication, and I hear the word gyno, I'm thinking pussy?
Yeah.
I'm thinking vagina?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Thinking pussy vagina?
Yeah, gotcha.
And the extermination of women? Is that fair?
That would make sense. I mean, putting the two words together. I mean, we probably should have looked the word up before doing this. That's the fun in it. Just, who cares?
Winging it. Interestingly enough, he spots like the starry sketch of the 3 beggars. A fox with the word pain in there, a bird with despair, and a deer with the words grief.
Exactly. And those are the 3 beggar statues that the kid knocks over before he falls out the window. So she brought those 3 into her home after being in Eden.
And I think this part is really interesting. He opens up her gynocide book and kind of like sees like what's written in there. And I don't want to sound like an asshole, but this looks like the scribblings of a 3-year-old.
Okay. So I'm going to say you're kind of coming off like an asshole strictly because that's how I write my notes for this podcast. If you just look over here, none of it's like...
It's about the same thing.
Yeah.
Did you read that book?
Pretty much. Well, no, if you actually do look, like, it starts off normal, the writing, and it descends into madness.
So it's like something that triggered her there caused her, and it's that voice she heard about her son.
Exactly. That's how I took it. It's like she started off normal, like just wanting to do her thesis, and then something triggered, like you said, and it slowly deteriorated her where she's just writing like me, like I do for the podcast every week.
And it's like almost like after he looks at this, I don't know if you notice, a few trees start falling down outside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if this is a trigger or this is just nature, but maybe there's a connection there. But at this point, he tells her he'd like to do one more exercise. He wants to hear her thoughts that provoke her fear. And he says, yours is rational thinking. I am nature. All the things you would call nature. She's like, okay, Mr. Nature, what do you want?
He wants to hurt her. That's basically, he says, I'm nature and I want to hurt
She's
you.
like, oh, by scaring me, he's like, by killing you.
She's like, you can't kill me. He says, but yes, I can. The kind of nature that causes people to do, like, the evil things against women. He wants to be her thesis, essentially.
He's like, that's exactly who I am. The evil that causes all bad things to happen to women. And she's like, this is the type of nature that's actually the subject of my thesis.
Yeah.
And then she tells him she discovered something else when she was researching in Eden.
And this is where her thesis changes to not the evil against women, but the evil that women do to everyone else.
Exactly.
And then, like, they have a conversation, basically, where if human nature is evil, then it's the same for women. All nature is just evil. And this is where it starts to get very bleak for everyone.
She says, women do not control their own bodies. Nature does. And then he tells her, he said, whoa, your literary research was about the evil against women, but you're reading this as proof that women are evil.
Yeah.
And then he tells her she's now embracing this idea, and it's the very idea she's supposed to be critical of in her research.
Yeah, like, she completely flipped sides.
And then guess what they do next? They have sex.
Yeah, and she's just like, hit me hard so it hurts.
He's like, I do not want to hit you.
And she's basically like, please, hit me. And she says, you won't hit me because you don't love me.
And he's like, well, maybe I don't love you.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
But basically, she does the only, like, thing she can do at this point in time, and she leaves the bed naked, goes and lays on a tree, and just very aggressively masturbates on the tree.
She starts pleasing herself at the base of this tree. And was this the thick tree?
I think it was the dying tree, like the
dying
old,
tree
the
that they were
old
talking
rotting
about
tree.
in her dreams in the beginning?
Yes.
It's cool because the sound here is very muffled at night, and the sound in this movie is interesting because there's not much of it.
No, it doesn't
It's
exist.
like very kind of
It's quiet.
It tries to be tranquil, but like while it's being tranquil, you're getting all these like difficult emotions that are just like bearing this darkness throughout the whole script of this movie. So it does work off it very well.
So Defoe goes outside to her. He finally does, like, slap her.
She's like, one more time, and then he slaps her again, and then he starts banging her on the tree, and I'm just like, this is insane.
Yeah.
Like, this can't be, is this a dream? Like, what is this?
Yeah,
Like, this is like a surrealist nightmare. Like, I feel like I'm watching Salvador Dali paint an hour and 50 movie in front of my eyes.
I've come to the conclusion, if we're watching and reviewing a Defoe movie on here,
it's gonna be wild.
Yeah, between this and The Lighthouse now.
I respect guys that go for like these ambitious scripts though.
Oh, Defoe's the best.
And then while she's getting plowed on a tree, she says, the sisters from Ratisbon can start a hailstorm. I had to look this up.
I'm glad you did.
So the Sisters from Ratisbon is like some women from a convent that like went to New York to teach German immigrants how to speak English or something like that.
Are they supposed to be like witches? Is that why they could start
Maybe.
a hailstorm, maybe?
I didn't read anything about witches.
Are they the women in Suspiria? Like,
I don't know, man. The graphic imagery you see is what I mentioned earlier, where you see like women's bodies underneath the roots, and you see like their hands extending over the roots. I don't know. I think it's really creepy. And you're like, what the hell is this about?
yeah,
Is this something to do with her research? I don't think there's really women dead there because they just randomly appeared, but like, what's the idea?
well, that's most of the movie while you're watching this. You're like, what is the idea here?
And it's interesting because they're so white in contrast to the dark green tree. It's very creepy. It almost looks like they're a part of the nature itself. Because you know, like, sometimes you have like those dark barks, but you have like those lighter, like hued barks.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
There's a lot going on. Like, you could read about this movie for hours after watching it. The research on this movie is longer than watching the actual movie. And this movie's like an hour 50, right?
Yeah.
Finally, after all this time, we cut to Defoe finally opening the manila envelope from the beginning of the movie. And in that envelope is a copy of the autopsy report for their son Nick, the only named character in this movie. There was nothing like abnormal other than the bones in his feet were forming in like a wrong shape.
And this happened at an earlier date.
Exactly.
This is not something that happened recently. This is something that's happened in the past.
And then Defoe realizes the pictures he was looking at from earlier, the shoes are on the wrong feet.
Exactly.
And then he like flips through the pictures and he realizes they're always been on the wrong feet.
Always. And he has to ask her and call her out on it. He's like, are you aware that in this one photo, Nick's shoes are on the wrong feet? And she's like, oh, how weird. Slip at the mind that day.
And I think that's around this time where he takes out his pyramid and he writes me, but referring to her as her biggest fear.
Yes. Meaning putting himself in her shoes. She's her own biggest fear. And then, as he does this, she hits him in the back with a plank of wood. And this is where the movie really turns on its head.
Yeah, okay. So some of the things we're going to describe in the next 15 or so minutes are going to get very graphic.
Very graphic.
If you don't like trauma to the genital region, we're going to describe both male and female, just giving you a heads up. So
It's gonna be fucking sick.
yeah, like after she knocks him on the ground, she then like wants to start fucking him again. But like he doesn't want any of it. So she takes that big block of wood and smashes his testicles with it.
She smashes his junk.
Yeah.
He's knocked out, mind you.
Yes. Now, you don't see that, but what you do see, an erect penis, and she starts to jerk off I'm just thinking the best way to describe this.
There's no other way to say it. She's making it rain.
Yeah. She starts to jerk off his penis while he's passed out, and blood starts to shoot out of it and onto her.
Yeeks.
One of the hardest to watch scenes I've seen.
Yeah, well, if you're a guy, this is like the worst thing you can ever witness. And women, trust me, you're gonna witness the worst thing that you can when you watch this movie.
This movie doesn't discriminate in that way, that's for sure, because we're all gonna be scarred here. She then starts to screw a hole into an area like right above his ankle, like the lower leg, and that's when she attaches what I guess we're dubbing now the Mason wheel to it. So this way he can't leave.
She's gonna drill through, she's gonna put that long rod in and lock in the Mason wheel.
Yes, and then she's going to hide the wrench underneath the cabin.
Yes.
This way he cannot unscrew this thing. Now he wakes up in very obvious pain.
Of course. He goes for his toolbox, but obviously with the wrench he's not looking for, it's not going to be in there.
No. So then she's not around, so he starts to crawl his way out since he can't walk. And I mean like the slowest, like painfulest crawl you can possibly do because you just got this giant wheel through your leg. Like, ugh. As he's crawling, though, she realizes he's missing. She just starts yelling, "Where are you, you bastard? Where are you?"
So something I want to mention, Oedipus was named after a hurt foot.
I guess.
So her urge, right, to hobble both her boy with the boots and the shoes and him now with his leg. It's almost like she's trying to contain him to her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To control him.
Yeah.
To always like retreat back to her. Like this is what I was saying in the beginning where I think like in some way she doesn't want to get better. She keeps wanting the cycle of him to be around.
That's the thing with, like, her grief has been so bad. Maybe because she has been kind of going crazy since even before the kid. Like, she was purposely, now we learned, putting the shoes on the wrong feet so he would have deformed feet. So he couldn't, like, get away from her. Like you said with the wheel now. So now Defoe can't get away from her. She's controlling.
It's like some kind of Freudian backlash here. It's very interesting.
And this is where the evil nature of woman that she is talking about is, like, coming out.
Exactly.
Which is where I understand where some people now would say this is, like, a misogynistic message. I get that, but overall, I think it's just a human nature is evil message more so than...
It is. I mean, they show examples on both sides with the controlling alpha male type character like him.
Yeah.
And her kind of, like, taking advantage of him in a way.
Exactly. In general, people suck. In graphic detail, though, it goes into for those. As he's crawling away, he sees the foxhole, and so he goes and hides in it.
It's not a bad idea. Problem is really no escape route.
There is something that's gonna rat him out in there.
Yeah, it's a fucking rat. No, it's actually a bird.
Yeah, so this is interesting, because the bird looks dead, and it looks like it's buried in the dirt. He, like, starts to dig it out, and the bird is alive and starts cawing. Cawing, I guess?
Squawking.
Squawking? Yeah. I was thinking crows. They go, caw, caw.
Is it a crow or a raven?
It's one or the other. They're both blackbirds.
Obviously, a representation of death and evil.
Part of the three beggars. So she hears this, and now this bird is the most indestructible thing in the movie.
That's kind of like the idea.
The symbolism of it. Because he's beating this bird, and it's still going. It's still making noise. Like, he can't get the bird to stop.
Because it's indestructible bird.
Yes. He's fighting this thing.
She's looking for him.
Yeah. Like I said, this bird is a tank. And it will not go down. So she knows exactly where he is. So she finds him in the foxhole.
She tries to pull him out. She can't. So she goes to the cabin for a shovel. She starts smacking his legs with the shovel.
Well, like, not even smacking. She's, like, almost stabbing.
Yeah.
She's stabbing so hard, though, it knocks a rock down and covers the hole.
Yeah, so now he's, like, trapped in there and he's gonna suffocate.
So she starts to dig above the ground to try to dig down into him.
To create an entrance from the opposite side.
Now, cut to Chapter 4, The Three Beggars.
So at this point, she's uncovering, basically digs him out of the dirt. And he's, like, unconscious, obviously. She's like, I'm sorry. So she takes him out of the dirt pile.
He's, like, begging her to, like, take this off my leg. Please take this off my leg.
So she goes to look for the tools for some reason. She's like, I can't find the wrench. Even though, like, she threw it under the house, like, 2 minutes ago.
She drags him back to the cabin when she does this. Just so we're not at the tree anymore, we're back at the cabin. Defoe asks, do you want to kill me? And she says not yet. The 3 beggars aren't here yet.
So it's like she wants to go through her full cycle of grief and then kill him?
Yeah.
She's like, when the 3 beggars arrive, someone must die. She literally starts to break down. She starts to lie on him. And then she's like, a crying woman is a scheming woman.
Mm-hmm.
False in legs, false in thighs, false in breast, teeth, hair, and eyes. And then she grabs a scissor.
Yeah. And then she grabs Defoe's hand and she puts it in between her legs.
Yes, because she's still naked.
Yep. And why don't you take this one?
I guess so. That's only fair. You did the other one. Remember those scissors?
Yeah.
So, I guess she feels like she owes herself some pain. She's lashing out against herself.
It's like she's paying her own penance for her sins.
So, her penance is cutting off her clitoris.
With the scissor. Up close, graphic detail.
Yes, because there's an up close shot where they show it. They show the snip, and they show the blood. And she screams, and because obviously this is insane pain, it alerts a nearby deer. I think deer's grief.
Yeah.
And at this point, he's looking up at the stars outside, seeing the starry sketch of the 3 beggars in the sky.
And he's saying to himself, there's no such constellation.
This man is grounded in rational science.
Yeah.
He doesn't know no such constellation. But he does kind of like get the vision of his son falling out of the window.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because behind the son is like a deer in the room.
Yeah, I think he even sees like the fetus deer and the fox like with his wife now too in this like kind of like flashing. So he's basically seeing the 3 beggars. Like they're here.
They're here and they're right next to his wife.
Yep. He starts elbowing the floorboard.
Because the thing is, he hears a noise from the floorboard.
The crow helps him. Or raven, whatever we're going with.
Let's go crow.
Yeah.
I think it's a crow.
Okay. And since he hears the crow, he elbows through and he reaches in and finds the wrench.
Exactly.
And he's able to, take off the mason wheel. And then him and his wife have a little scuffle.
Yes, because she gets back up, she stabs him with the scissors, and she takes the scissors out, she attempts to stab him again, but he stops her, and at this point, I think the lock on the wheel is unscrewed, but he has to take the long rod out of the leg, and he's doing this all while trying to fight her off. So she grabs the wrench, he eventually pulls it out, obviously screaming in agony, he grabs her, he throws her up against the cabin, she drops the wrench, and then he just presses his hands to her throat.
Yeah, very violent, graphic choking of her. Like, just chokes her until she dies.
Yeah, it's a tough shot.
It's like the Todd scene in Final Destination. You even see, like, the blood start to come into her eyes.
Yeah.
It's very brutal, but she is the one who's killed. Willem Dafoe is not.
He takes her body, and I think he burns it outside in, like, a bunch of thickets.
Yeah.
And you get him walking now out of Eden, like, on his way back, and you get, like, an overhead shot of him walking through the forest, and you see the thick tree from her dreams that was in the beginning of the film.
And don't they, like, flash, like, all the bodies, like, underneath the ground?
Yes. So while they're showing this overhead shot, you just see a transitional, like, scene of the bodies just littered around the forest. And like I mentioned, they're all, like, this pale white color, in contrast with the deep green from the trees and the ground.
And now, epilogue. We're at the end. We've made it.
We're here. So all the scenes now in the epilogue are in black and white. Like, it's kind of the same thing as the prologue. You get that opera music.
Yeah. Defoe is limping away. Then you see him lay down and he starts eating some berries. Because I don't think he's eaten.
Yeah, so the idea of the berries, I think, now that she's no longer his patient, he's almost in a way like, in my interpretation, he's got nothing else for him. And the interesting part about this scene is he eats these berries, and he sees the 3 beggars in, like, these phantom forms. And then he stands up, and he sees a bunch of faceless women.
Yeah.
Faces are blurred out. And you're talking, like, hundreds of women. So I just think it's, like, super ironic that he went through this whole experience with her. He had to kill her. Because she, like, and however way you want to put it, she studied witches. In a way, it's like she almost became a witch.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like.
Yeah. So she, like, kind of became a witch, becoming this evil nature she created for herself. His idea of trying to protect her failed, and now he no longer has her. He's now surrounded by all of the women in the forest here. So I think that's pretty cool.
And that's where the movie ends. And man, was that a lot to take in.
Oh, for sure. So like I said, people are either going to think that this is either for them. The other hand, they're going to think, like, this is
a pile of trash.
Not art. Like, a lot of
Yeah.
people will criticize this just being, like, maybe a hate film or something
Yeah.
like that. I'm not there. I don't think so. People referring to this as like torture porn and like things like that. I think that's a stretch.
It's not like, you're not like watching like Hostel or something like that, where it's just violence for the sake of violence. I feel like he had a point.
There's purpose. There's
Yeah.
definitely intent. And I think that it's a super, super dark movie.
Yeah.
Talks about, man versus woman, man or woman versus nature, creation versus destruction. There's a lot of really strong concepts with this movie. And they're all
There's a lot
kind of
going on.
compile and are surrounding the story of this family coping with the loss of their son.
It's a lot to take in. It's all symbolism and like, you could take it so many different ways.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to touch on with what I just mentioned at the end of our spoiler and walkthrough was the idea of her like almost becoming this witch. And that's what I'm saying, like throughout this movie, I almost think that she's manipulating him, like throughout the whole movie. With
That's
the
where it comes in, where she says a crying woman is a scheming woman.
acorns and all of these things. She says that she knows like what these things are, and he doesn't. She has to tell him about the acorns the last time she was at
Almost like the whole time she knew she would eventually lead him to this cabin to be sacrificed to the three beggars.
kind of like a cool idea, kind of like making her like becoming this evil that she's kind of like has done some pretty nasty things with her son.
Yeah.
They don't really go into any history before that, more than she's been improperly putting on shoes. Why she's doing it?
Some of the Antichrist? No, I'm kidding. It has nothing to do with that.
We don't really know why she's doing it, but she was intentionally hurting her son.
So with all that said, ratings. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It's a movie I never want to see again, but I'm glad I saw it once. Because it is like a movie that does get you thinking. It gets you like trying to figure out, what does this mean? What does this mean? The violence is insane. And a lot of the reason why I don't need to see it again, those graphic scenes are hard to watch and I don't need to see them again. But it was interesting. It held my interest. I was always wondering what was going on. The acting is phenomenal.
Phenomenal, yeah.
The cinematography is great. Like the shots. I mean, you can't say much about the sound because there isn't much, but that's the point.
It's the point.
I liked it for watching it the one time. I think it's an 8 out of 10. You can stomach those things we described. You could definitely watch it. But I also feel like you'll probably feel like me where it's like, you never need to see this movie again.
Yeah, I agree and echo your sentiments. I give this movie like a very, very high 7 out of 10. Definitely enjoyed it. Actually, I've seen it a couple times now, and I actually enjoyed it the later time I watched it than the earlier time that I watched it. It's very profound to me. It's very powerful, and I like all these dark and gritty concepts that people don't really like to explore so much. I like how he kind of input a lot of Lynchian surrealism in here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of that.
There's a lot of other directors who you see shades of them in this film. I think the story is really cool. Like I said, you're dealing with this really dark concept, and he's kind of flipping it on its head to give it a backstory, to show like people are just generally cruel. It's almost like a nihilistic view of the world. Like we're sowing the ends of our own destruction. We're really bad people.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing very bad things. And everything around us is just a crumbling version of what we're doing to ourselves. It's just like, we're the downfall of nature, and we're also the downfall of ourselves because we have the downfall of nature.
Do you have anything else to add to this, or think it's time we wrap this one up?
No, I think that I get the criticisms, whether good or bad. I heard that this movie was basically like ripped apart at the Cannes Festival.
Yeah, that happens. I could see, it's not a critic movie.
No, but like, I always say it, and people may disagree with me, but if people think that, like, one thing that's hard to watch is bad, you gotta keep that consistent to every movie where there's tough subject matter to watch. Mm-hmm. We talked about this yesterday. I fucking hate it when critics are like, oh, well, this guy or girl molesting this little kid throughout an entire movie is cool. But like, I don't know, this movie portraying, this woman kind of manipulating a guy throughout the whole movie is bad. Like, you gotta make it consistent. Condemn them all if you're gonna condemn one piece of behavior. Unless you think the child molestation is cool and just the misogyny is bad.
It's a movie. Like, just let it be a movie. It's nothing more than that, in a sense. Like, it has its messages and themes, but at the end of the day, it is just a movie.
Yeah, like I said, if this movie's gonna be effed up to somebody, it's gonna be effed up to everybody. At least that's my take, but everybody has their own opinions.
Exactly. And that's why we would love to hear your opinions. So, if you haven't already, follow us on Facebook at 2guys1necronomicon. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at 2guys1necro. Like I said, we would love to hear your opinions, thoughts, anything you want to talk about with movies. And with all that said, we're going to go a little lighthearted next episode.
I think we have to.
Yeah, we need a palate cleanse, so to speak. So, we've decided not to do a good movie, but to do a piece of trash.
Whoa. Bite your tongue.
We're reviewing Stay Alive.
Yeah, he's right. This movie sucks.
But it's definitely going to be a fun movie to talk about because there's a lot of interesting things that happen in this movie.
I love Malcolm in the Middle.
Yes. So, with all that said, tune in next week where we'll see you at Elizabeth Bathory's house.
LeBron, cash money! Oh, hi there. Please, please, leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It means a lot to me and the team. Every 5-star puts us on World Star. No, but we'll take it.